For the past 10 years or so, I've made a habit to carry a small notebook. The last page is always reserved for phone numbers, and the second to last I use for gift ideas. These are not things that I may give to people, but rather things that they may give to me. A shoehorn, for instance. I've always wanted one. My boyfriend Hugh says that lists are the easy way out, and that if I really knew him, I wouldn't have to ask him what he wanted. It's not enough to search the shops. I have to search his soul as well. He turns gift giving into a test, which I don't think is fair at all. This, he offers no help whatsoever. Or rather, he used to offer no help. Last year, he finally dropped a hint, and even then it was fairly cryptic. Go out to the front door, he said, then make a right and keep walking. He did not say stop before you reach the boulevard, or when you've come to the checked border, you know you've gone too far. But he didn't need to. I knew what he was talking about the moment I saw it. It was a human skeleton hanging from the window of a medical bookstore. Hugh's old drawing teacher used to have one, and I could suddenly recall him talking about it. If I had a skeleton like Minerva's, I never remembered the rest of his sentence, as I'd always been sidetracked by the teacher's name, Minerva. Sounds like a witch. Facing morality can be hard, but living up to someone else's moral standards is just wrong. In Memento Mori by David Sedaris, the protagonist has to face the fact that he isn't perfect, and that he is going to die, but in a cynical way. I thought that I would enjoy buying a human skeleton, but looking through the shop window, I felt a familiar tug of disappointment. This had nothing to do with any moral considerations. I was fine with buying someone who'd been dead for a while. I just didn't know where to put him. Finding a box would be a pain. Between one thing and another, I was almost relieved when told that the skeleton was not for sale. He's our mascot, the store manager said. We couldn't possibly get rid of him. Being told that I couldn't buy a skeleton was just what I needed to make me really want one. Do you know anyone who will sell me their skeleton? Ugh, fine, you might be able to have it. There's a latch in the center of the forehead, which allows you to either root around or hide things. Food, say, or small pieces of gold. It's not what one hopes for when thinking of the afterlife, but I didn't let that bother me. I didn't think of it as a former person until Christmas Day, when I gave the present to Hugh. If you don't like the color of it, we can bleach it, I said. He was beside himself. He couldn't be happier. I assumed that he would be using it as a model and was a little put off when, instead of taking it to his basement studio, he carried it to the bedroom and hung it on the ceiling. The following morning, I reached under the bed for a discarded sock and found what looked like a 3-tiered earring. It looked like something that you'd get from a craft fair. Not pretty, but definitely handmade, fashioned from what looked like petrified wood. I was just holding it to the side of my head when I thought, wait, this is a finger. It must have fallen out while he was hanging the skeleton. If this thing is going to start shedding parts, you really need to move this to your basement studio, I told Hugh, who said that it was his present and he could do whatever he wanted with it. Then he got out some wire and reattached the missing finger. As the days pass, I keep hoping that the skeleton will disappear. But he hasn't. Hanging between the dresser and the bedroom door, he is the last thing that I see before falling asleep, and the first thing that I see when I wake up. It's funny how certain objects convey a message. My washer and dryer, for example. They can't speak, of course, but whenever I pass by them, they remind me that I'm doing fairly well. No more laundromat for you, they hum. My stove, a downer, tells me every day that I can't cook, and before I can defend myself, my scale jumps in. Well, it must be doing something. My numbers are off the charts. The skeleton, on the other hand, has a much more limited vocabulary and only says one thing. You are going to die. I thought that I understood this, but recently I realized that what I call understanding is basically just fantasizing. I think about death all the time, but only in a romantic, self-serving way, beginning most often with my tragic illness and ending with my funeral. I see my brother, so racked with guilt that he's unable to stand. If only I paid him back the $25,000 that I borrowed. I see Hugh, drying his eyes on his sleeve jacket and crying even harder when he remembers what I bought for him. Who I don't see are all of the people who might celebrate my death. But that'll change with the skeleton, who assumes features at will. At one moment, he's an elderly woman, the one who I didn't give my seat to on the bus. In my books, if you want to be treated like an old person, you need to look like one. That means no facelift, no blonde hair, and definitely no fishnet stockings. I think it's a perfectly valid rule, but it wouldn't have hurt to take her crutches into consideration. She will be happy to see me go, and there are hundreds more in a line, some whom I can name, others whom I've managed to hurt and insult without even a formal introduction. I haven't thought of these people in years, but that's the skeleton's cleverness. He gets into my head when I'm asleep and picks at the muck at the bottom of my skull. Why me? I ask. Hugh was lying in the very same bed. And the skeleton says, "You are going to die." Do you think that you could alter that just a little? You are going to die. At first, I heard the voice only when I was in the bedroom, and then it spread and took over the entire apartment. In the bathroom, "You are going to die." In the kitchen, "You are going to die." In the bedroom, "You are going to die." In the office, "You are going to die." Do you think that you could alter that just a little? I asked one more time. But he wouldn't. Having been dead for 300 years, there's a lot that a skeleton doesn't understand. TV, for instance. "See," I told him, "you just press this button and entertainment pops into your home." He seemed impressed at first, so I took it a step further. I invented it myself to come to the field and say, "You are going to die." You know, I'm not as much of a bit. "You are going to die!" And that's when I broke down. "I'll do anything you like," I said. "I'll make amends to the people I've hurt. I'll bathe in rainwater, you name it. Just please say something. Anything else." The skeleton hesitated a moment. "You are going to be dead. Someday," he said. And I thought, well, that's a start.